Here's my final video previewing the candidates tournament that starts in Berlin on Saturday, March the 10th. So just two players to go that I've yet to introduce, and well, at least on the live rating list, these are the two top seeds. So first of all, Vladimir Kramnik, who is only in the tournament because he was nominated as the wild card by the organisers. Of course, you know, he's one of the strongest players in the world. There's no doubt about it. But you know, maybe it would have been nice if he'd qualified by normal means. Nevertheless, of course, he's one of the world's greatest players and former world champion. Well, his record is quite extraordinary. He's 42 years old, 2800, and number 3 on the live list. His record in tournament play is incredible. And what I find interesting about Kramnik is that I think his style over the years has become more and more adventurous. You know, he's a very principled player, and if you look at his tournament results, you know, there are so many decisive games, one way or the other. You know, not that many draws. Which, you know, so he's a very entertaining player. And I think this game is a very good example of that. So this was played in the Dortmund tournament last July 2017, and it's against German Grandmaster Matthias Blühbaum. Here Kramnik just forged ahead with his f-pawn, and this entails an exchange sacrifice. So, nice bishops, beautiful knight on d5, taking a lot of control in the centre, but actually nothing clear. And it's a very typical Kramnikian sacrifice, actually. So white has to be careful because of the threat to play queen takes bishop, just using the pin. So he just brings the king in the corner. So, you know, there's no dramatic follow-up here. But, you know, he's swinging the queen over to the king side. This is a fantastically complicated game. I'm not going to go through all the variations, but it's really just illustrates how, you know, how aggressively he plays these days. But, you know, what's interesting, he's just holding everything together. And now he's taking aim at the king side. If knight takes pawn, then queen takes g5. So first of all, he plays queen g3. So it's just very gentle. And this is interesting. Bishop c7 played by Blühbaum. Of course, he wants to trade this wonderful bishop. But Kramnik just gives up another exchange. I mean, it's just superb. And this is also still incredibly unclear. But, you know, Kramnik just recognises that this is the principled move. This, you know, gives me the initiative. So, bishop f6, hitting the queen. The queen comes to b4. And now he's ready, having pushed the queen away, to break on the king side. I mean, these moves are absolutely not forced for both sides, but let me just show you what happened in the game. g6. This is really very, very clever. So the idea is that if pawn takes pawn, then white switches this way. I mean, it's a very not unusual, but you know, maybe it's hard to foresee that when you're defending, that suddenly the queen switches one way and cuts back. And I suspect Blühbaum might have overlooked that in his calculations some moves before, and suddenly there's going to be a checkmate on g7. So after g6 check, king came back to g8, but queen g5 is obviously incredibly dangerous. And here knight d5 still holds on for a little bit, but h4 loses instantly to queen h6. And now there really is no defence. There are a few checks, but Kramnik had worked out that, in fact, the checks run out. It's very clever, actually. the queen, to keep checking, has to go on this diagonal, and now on this diagonal, not this one, the white king is safe. And of course, mate follows. Fantastically complicated, but you know, such a principled game by Kramnik, continuing on. Wonderful stuff. So it's going to be really interesting. I mean, it would be incredible if he manages to qualify for another world title match at the age of 24. So moving on to the player who is number 2 on the live list currently, and that is Shakhriyar Mamedyarov from Azerbaijan. So number 2 on the live list, 32 years old, rated 28-14. So he is the player that is closest at the moment to Magnus Carlsen. He's had a tremendous 2017. He qualified for the candidates by winning through in the FIDE Grand Prix series, where he played extremely well. He played very well in the recent Tata Steel tournament, scoring 8.5 out of 13. You know, he showed real desire there as well. So he seems to be in form. And when Mamedyarov is in form, then he is a really entertaining player to watch. Right, I remember right from when he won the World Junior Championship in, I don't know when it was it 2003, something like that? You know, he had this incredibly daring attacking style. And I think this game, which was played in the Russian Team Championship last May, illustrates that extremely well. So this was against Nair, Yevgeny Nair, very strong Russian Grandmaster. And Mamedyarov is gambling. You can see this position arose from a Benoni. And, well, at the moment, white is a pawn up. Black has very active pieces. So, yeah, Mamedyarov is gambling. Active, very active pieces indeed. Here, Nair played g4. So this is an all or nothing move. Of course, white is not obliged to play like this. But he obviously thought that this was winning. But Mamedyarov had seen further. Let's see what happened. Queen h4. So if pawn takes bishop, then queen check. And the rook comes up to f6. And boom! So the queen comes to g2. So no doubt Nair had seen this far and thought he was still fine. But here is where we see Mamedyarov's creativity in attacking. Knight takes pawn. So threatening here, maybe threatening a check. So here with queen there. So that gets taken. And now bishop e5. So a quiet move after that. Threatening a mate with the queen. So rook h1. Check. And now not queen takes bishop. After queen takes bishop, I think probably after pawn takes, white would have pretty good survival chances. I mean, maybe Nair had seen this far but overlooked what was coming next. Bishop d3 check. So if that's taken, then queen takes. Don't forget there's a threat here. And this leads to devastation, of course. So after check, the bishop came back to e2 to block. And now, rook takes b2. So this is fantastic. Just so typical of his dynamic, explosive style. Takes the bishop, and now there's a threat to take here, of course. With the queen would be checkmate. And there's no decent defense now. Even though white is a rook up, but it's, I mean, d2 is threatened, for example, among other things. So Nair tried here, but after this, he resigned. So black has bishop and knight against a rook and a safe king. and the queen is continuing to attack. So white decided enough was enough. So Mamedyarov, if he's on form, well, he's just such an exciting player. So there we go. That concludes my introduction of all the players in the candidates tournament. It is just going to be tremendous. I'll be reporting on every round, so 8 players, double round, all play all, 14 rounds that means, of course. Don't miss it. That's all I'm going to say.